Orcs, the only miniature we're allowed to paint in the month of October. Orcs are my main faction in Warhammer 40k, and I love them. I've got tons of different types of orcs, from vehicles to big shooters to this guy, Mad Doc, that I painted. Here he is with some tiny orcs that I painted up too in a separate video. I have probably 2,000 points worth of orcs, and let's be honest, I've painted a lot of orcs. Not all of them were good. This is a Kitbash I did when I first started getting back into the hobby. I had this Leman Russ from my childhood, and I figured, well, I got some orcs, they need something to drive around in. It went very, very well until I ruined it, and I have not touched it for like 2 years. This poor Leman Russ I kitbashed and built up, and I added all these fun little orc gubbins to it, and stuff I thought was cool at the time, but I put on orky gubbins like these little generators, and I replaced some of the weapons, put a whole big exhaust pipe on the back, and big guns and stuff. Just orky bits. But I ruined the entire thing with a spray paint of silver. Some thick silver that I will never ever recommend because it gummed up all the details. And this model's been sitting in my closet for like 2 years because of that. My name is Chris. I like to paint things, and today we're gonna save this Leman Russ conversion. We're gonna fix up some issues and paint it to look beautiful and fit right in my orc army.
Oaks.
There were a few things I had to do to clean up this model, and honestly I'm not going to change any of the kit bashing. I'm just going to try and paint it and fix it up. First one, we got to bring some detail back so I don't get lost in this mess of terribly thick paint. I started with a dry brush of kind of like dusty white and then silver. I'm not really sure what I was thinking here, but I just wanted to bring the edges back so I could see what was going on and kind of define and break up pieces. I figured this would make it easier and get rid of that weird effect I got from the really crappy silver paint. I did find that this dry brush of mine was a little big, so I went with something slightly smaller. Just, again, I wanted to separate everything, get some nice hard edges, and break up this paint splatter so it didn't look as terrible. You want to do this on any vehicle, really, because screw edge highlighting a whole vehicle. I know I always say I love edge highlighting, but gosh, there's no way I'm ever going to do that on a large vehicle. And I say that now, but give it time. Then I took my brown wash that I've used in multiple videos, and we need to thicken it back up a little, because last time I used it, it was a bit runny. With our safety bib in place, we don't want to get anything on our nice pants. I lather this all over the model. Now I know I haven't done any painting yet, but this is just sort of a pre-wash to do the same thing as that dry brush did. I just want to get everything separated and into its own defined shapes and spaces. So using a super large brush, I just slather the model in this really light wash so I can kind of bring some shadows back out.
Oaks.
Now, in my orc army, they're primarily purple, but I have a lot of different types of orcs.
Orcs is made for fighting.
Specifically, these red orc knobs that they're a nice kitbash of like goth, big mech boys. I'm not 100% sure, but they're really cool. I did paint this guy on a video, if you haven't seen it, last Orktober. We're gonna use the same color scheme because I like my vehicles to be red and black because the red ones go faster, and the black ones, well, apparently they're better at killing. So we start with a base coat of dark red, and then we're gonna slowly work our way up to like a very bright red and like a watered down gradient. I'm just gonna pick out some panels, and the fun thing about this was I could literally just decide what has to be painted what, because they're stole a military vehicle, right? They're not like actually gonna paint it like one. If anything, I like to imagine these orcs like stripped all the paint off and painted over everything. Or the whole thing caught fire and somehow they were able to make it work, and that's why it has none of the guard paint left on it. Either way, they paint it red, because again, red ones go faster. Then I work my way up to a brighter red, that pure red you saw earlier, just by kind of slowly mixing. And I don't do a full coverage on this. I'm kind of going for like a really terribly painted Ork vehicle, because that's honestly what makes Ork vehicles look good, is they're not painted well. Then I work in an orange into this to kind of build up a little more variation in the color. I don't want it to be just red all the way through. Orange is nice. This, again, I'm experimenting, doing some wet blending just to kind of see what works. Getting a little textured and uneven, because I think that'll really help later when we go to weather this bad boy. Almost like the worst edge highlighting you've ever seen. Then I took just that orange and did a really nice stippled highlight on the bottom, and I'm going to kind of work this and weave it back in. You honestly won't even see this at the end. I don't know, man. I'm just playing around. Next, we're going to take inks. Inks are fun. I could use contrast paint for this, but I have a lot of this ink, and I just want to change some of those areas so the whole thing isn't just the same sort of metal. So we're going to take a couple drops of black ink, which is going to just tone the model instead of doing like a solid base coat of black. That just seemed not as fun. Honestly, it might have worked out better in the end, but I just like playing around, and inks are fun. I like leaving stuff to dry so I don't really have to actually do anything. I just place it on spots and see what happens, you know, experimenting. So I'm just blocking out large panels. Again, probably not the ideal thing to do with this, but I have ink and I feel like I never use it. Looking back at this footage now, you know, a week in retrospect, a lot of this was kind of wasted time, and there are better ways to do it, especially you'll see what I do with the treads later. Yeah. After that dried, again, I hated the treads, so I just went over them in a dark, like off blue gray, like a military style gray. I think that kind of works better for now. Probably would have left the treads metal, but the entire thing is metal, so it would look kind of silly. I need to separate all the elements so it doesn't just look like a bad spray paint, because that's kind of what it is. Then I took some texture paste for some reason. I didn't really feel like whipping up a nice batch of texture paste from baking soda that I've done in plenty of other videos and takes only about 2 minutes. But I just used this to put over the really terrible, like, sand effects I tried to do that mostly just look like there's gravel on it. I just wanted to break these up and make them look a little more natural. They'll obviously get painted over with, you know, dirt colors later, but I don't know. I was new at this whole kit bashing and hobbying thing. I had no idea what I was doing, but I was having fun, and I don't want to take away any of the fun that I had when I first did it. I mean, I love the composition of the model, but the execution is just terrible. Next, I wanted the turret to spin. I desperately wanted the turret to spin, but it would not budge. It just would not budge. So I kept twisting and twisting until, God damn it. It's just annoying. I looks like I filled the entire model with hot glue. I think it's just gonna stay that way, and the turret's gonna be pointed diagonally. Lesson learned. This was honestly kind of a pain in the ass to fix too. The one thing I did want to change was the barrel. First off, there's a massive seam running through it. And second, I thought a fun orky barrel might look cool, or maybe an explosion effect. I don't know. I tried a couple of different options to see what would fit, and I did not really like any of them. So I ended up saying screw it, and I grabbed my pliers, and we're just gonna rip the barrel open. I kind of wanted to look like the grots overpacked it, and that's what split the entire thing open. I could probably fix this, but honestly, it's got way worse when the model broke, and here we are. So I just grabbed chunks of it off and pull it open. I want it to look like, you know, in a cartoon when Bugs Bunny puts his finger in Elmer Fudd's gun, and it just blows up in his face. That's kind of what I was going for.
oaks, 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 oaks.
Now the fun bit, details. We're gonna add a bunch of these little water transfer decals that orcs are kind of tough to add them on normal boys because they don't have like good smooth panels and places to put them. So I cut a few of these off and I figure we can really add some extra fun and get away with a lesser paint job if we just throw in some decals and details and extra little things like that. I don't know if these ones are old, but God, they were such a pain. They kept breaking on me, which is not a problem I've ever really had with transfers before. It was frustrating. Nah, I don't know. I don't know what I did wrong. Someone tell me. The others went on like a dream. One of my big tips is to take some varnish and varnish over them after the water dries. This will seal in the model, and I know you can do microsol and microset and all this fancy stuff, but man, I don't know. I'm just against change, I think is the right way to put it. I just like to do things how I know how to do them, and that's how I did it. I sealed in all of the details so that when I grind this bad boy up, those guys won't move around. Then I I outright stole a nice makeup brush of my wife's, and I'm going to make the whole thing dusty. I'm going to bring all the base coats together with a dry brush of an off, like a reddish white. I don't know if it's red, it's like a warm white. And I'm going to hit all the edges, make everything look real dusty and dirty, do the not edge highlighting technique again. This makeup brush worked a lot better than the other one, and it also made that dirt look a little bit more like dirt. Then we took our brown wash from earlier. This time I had to make it a little more thick. I didn't want it to be runny. I wanted to genuinely stain the entire model, make it real grim and dark. So I added in some burnt umber paint and some black paint. The secret apparently to dip wash like this is just like a drop of soap. I don't know when I need to add another drop of soap, but it does look like chunky chocolate milk, I think, is the best consistency for a good grimy wash. So then I get my brush a little wet because I don't want it to be, I don't know, I just thicken it up and then I'm going to make the brush wet. I don't know, sue me, I don't know what I'm doing. I lather the entire model in this really grisly dark wash. We want to hit every single spot, leave no surface unstained. And I know what you're saying, God, Chris, that looks like actual shit. And literally shit and just bad. But that's why we then come in after like a second with a paper towel and just get all of the surfaces. We're not necessarily going to dry like in the cracks, and the paper towel obviously isn't going to reach into the cracks. This is going to leave this looking nice and grimy, but we then go back in and just grab a few details. Now if you notice, I do make a mistake on the barrel that I don't think I have ever corrected. Definitely don't correct it by the end of this video, and looking at the model on my shelf, I also didn't correct it, but that's okay. That's life. This model was never going to be perfect. After that wash dried, I thought the model was looking pretty good, pretty grim, pretty dank. So now it's time to highlight, to bring it all back up, to bring the colors back up so they can pop. So we're just going to take bright reds and bright silvers and white and bring all the base coats. We're going to do a bit of edge highlighting, a bit of blending. Don't worry about it, it's not important. This is not a how-to video. The big thing I need to do was bring that grot on top back out. So here are my typical orc highlight colors, and he's really going to sing on top of that tank. The last bit of detail work we're gonna do is some weathering. I bought one of these natural sponges that I see people using all the time, and I've never really had a good reason to try it until now. So we're gonna take some ready, dirty looking brown, which is actually a really nice Vallejo color, and just make it look like dirt and scrapes in the metal, and just rotate and tap the sponge on different areas. And apparently this is supposed to look like rust or weathering or just dirt. I like how much it breaks it up, but I don't think it's looking realistic. Now, does a looted tank being piloted by 2-foot tall green men with guns need to look realistic? Probably not, but I wanted to try it. So then I took like the same off-white from earlier and I mixed it in a little bit to give us some, variation in that weathering. I think it made it look way more like caked on dirt because it looked like some parts of it had dried and some were still wet. That's whatever. I didn't hate it. Then there were a few areas I did base coat gray. I didn't really mention that earlier, just because I wanted them to not be metal, but I wanted them to look a little different. It does kind of look like this gun is made of stone, which, I mean, maybe it is. I'm not sure. I did add some fun little freehand details and an homage to old school Warhammer. I like putting kill kill on my vehicles, or kill kill kill, or whatever. I think it looks fun and it's silly. No, I'm not that old. I was not around for those days. Sorry, old people, but I think it's fun. Then I touched up some of the spots of gold with an actual edge highlight of silver. I find that always brings gold back out as if it has silver on all of the edges. I don't know why it didn't really replace the Imperial insignia, but I do kind of like that it's crooked because it looks like the orcs tried to rip it off and struggled and they just broke it. I think it's funnier and it's a little more insulting. And because I'm a sadist, I dotted every single rivet that I thought mattered. I think it really helps. Don't ask me why. You can fight me on that any day, but I dotted every single rivet. Last thing I wanted was some extra contrast on those treads to really break them up. So I took an actual black speed paint and I went over all of the treads like I was giving them a wash, but like a really heavy one. Could have used the ink again. I don't know, man. I'm just freewheeling it at this point. No one can tell me what to do. Now that took a little while to dry, but it meant that our model is basically done. And that's it. It's not the greatest model I think I've ever painted, but I'm very satisfied with how it came out. I'm mostly just satisfied because I was able to get it out of the closet, out of the pile of shame, and he fits in perfectly with all of my orcs. Here they are laid out in all of their glory. I think I'm up to probably 2,000 points, but I'm not positive. I don't know. I don't play 40k, man. I'd play one-page rules if I have to. But check these guys out. Let me know what you think. I can do a better showcase. I was definitely rushing the finale of this video because I don't think the model is exceptionally well painted. It's definitely not one of the nicest things I've done. No offense, big old looted Lehman Russ. Either way, if you made it this far in the video, like and comment and subscribe and whatever you feel like doing with your time. Leave me a comment. Honestly, I really liked reading them on my last video. That was really cool. Got a lot of love. I appreciate that. Either way, I've been Chris. I like to paint things. This tank is finally going to hit the battlefield. Have a great night.